The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Great. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for the Kicking Off the School Year in a Healthy Way, How Families and Schools Can Work Together, which is a webinar that Healthy Schools Campaign is hosting with two wonderful Chicago-based principals who will be presenting today, and we are very excited to hear from them. So before we go ahead and get started with the webinar, we just wanted to run through a few brief logistics. So our webinar is going to run for about an hour today, and a recording of the webinar is going to be available online after. And we'll be sure to send out a link to that in a follow-up email that will go out. And also at the end, if you could please take a minute to just complete a very brief survey at the end of the webinar, which will just let us know what you thought of it and give us feedback so we can make sure we continue to improve these webinars. We'll also be holding a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So we're going to try to save the last 10 to 15 minutes throughout the webinar. Everybody should have a chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of their screen. And you can send in your questions throughout the webinar. Just keep, as soon as you think of it, type it into that box, send it in, and we'll be collecting those throughout the webinar and make sure we get to them at the end. This webinar is part of a series of webinars that we're hosting this summer and fall actually now, and so we'll be sending out a link to register for those additional webinars later on. We have a great lineup of webinars and hope you can join us for future ones. So our lineup of speakers today, we're excited to have Christy Cox from Healthy Schools Campaign, Michael Heitkamp, who's the principal at Green Elementary, and Allison Slade, who's the executive director at Namaste Charter School. So I am going to hand it over to Christy momentarily. But first, before Christy takes it over, we want to do a quick poll question. We want to know who is out there today. So tell us who you are. Are you a principal, a teacher, a parent, or a nonprofit advocate? And so I'll briefly introduce Christy. Christy is our training and program manager at Healthy Schools Campaign. She runs our Fit to Learn for Teachers program, which is a program that teaches Chicago Public School teachers about how they can integrate health and wellness into the classroom and support classroom management strategies that integrate health and make sure we're creating the healthiest school environment possible for our students. So we're going to go ahead and close that poll and share the results briefly. It looks like we have a lot of parents and nonprofit advocates, that's interesting, and others. So clearly we did not do a good job with coming up with the questions for the options for the poll, but we'll be sure, feel free to chat in if you classified yourself as other, what you would identify as. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and hand it over to Christy.
Thanks, Alex. So as Alex said, I'm Christy Cox. I'm the Training and Program Manager here at Healthy Schools Campaign. And I run the professional development training for our Chicago teachers called Fit to Learn, which focuses on health and wellness in the classroom. But we're not going to spend too much time talking about my program because we want to share some information about our organization, Healthy Schools Campaign. So for the last 10 years, in addition to our work at the state and national level, Healthy Schools Campaign has focused significant efforts in Chicago, where we've worked to improve the food and fitness environment in the public schools. Our programs focus on identifying and supporting agents of change. So this specifically includes parents, teachers, students, principals, and school nurses, and helping them make changes at their schools and at their district. Through this work, we've had the opportunity to see how federal, state, and local decisions impact our schools. We've also come to understand the importance of empowering individuals to be change agents. The need for teachers, principals, and other school staff to have knowledge and skills to create the conditions for health in classrooms and schools. At Healthy Schools Campaign, we work on promoting programs and policies to improve the school environment. So from improving the air quality, specifically around reducing exposure to toxic chemicals, to supporting improved nutrition standards and increased access to physical activity. Our programs work to address health disparities around asthma and obesity that affect so many of our children these days. So research documents what teachers already know. Healthy, active, well-nourished students are better prepared to learn. The school environment, from the air they breathe to the food they eat and opportunities to be active and healthy and habits they develop will shape the health and learning for a lifetime. Schools really do play a powerful role in shaping students' lifelong habits and behaviors. Children today are not expected to live as long as their parents. This is an alarming statement that has been pretty consistent over the last several years. We know that this is a trend that's been reversed because children have lived longer than their parents. We know that for the last 100 years. But because of obesity rates, the increase in obesity rates, we know today that nearly 1/3 of children and adolescents are overweight or obese, and that if they're overweight or obese as children, they're more likely to be obese as adults, which is really alarming. So here's some quick statistics on childhood obesity and where we are at with our children. In Chicago, the obesity rates are twice as high for minority children, which is a little disturbing, and 43% of Chicago students are considered overweight or obese. Childhood obesity has increased dramatically over the years, and nearly 1 in 3 children in America are overweight or obese. This is especially true for families living in low-income communities, African American and Latino neighborhoods, rural areas, and then in the South where obesity rates are significantly higher. Childhood obesity leads to a list of health consequences such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, asthma, sleep apnea, the list goes on. So really, again, focusing on the fact that we have some work to do on childhood obesity and that healthier students perform better in school. And the good news is that we can make these changes. We can do something about it. One of the important strategies that we use here at Healthy Schools campaign is parent engagement. We know that students who have parents who are engaged in their lives, not necessarily just in school, but in their lives, they tend to have higher grades, better test scores, better behavior, and enhanced social skills. We also know that changes tend to be more effective if you're trying to make these changes at a school level. If you have the parents' buy-in, then the change can become not just part of a student's life, but the whole family becomes involved, which is really important to supporting health and wellness. Our work with parents has been going on for many years, and we've trained over 300 parents to become wellness advocates at their school. Some of the big changes and big wins we've had here in Chicago, specifically around parent advocacy, is mandatory daily recess. This was a big win for us here in Chicago since many students weren't getting recess at all. Breakfast in the classroom, so this is true for every student, and actually lunch now is free for everyone. So everyone in CPS now receives free breakfast and free lunch, and that was a big win for our parents. And then also improving school food. We recognized that there were some opportunities with food, specifically around fried foods and high sodium, and so we worked with Chicago Public Schools, with the parents, to make these changes, and now we've made significant improvements in the food that's being served to the children here in Chicago. So how do we support schools? Well, we have our parent leadership training, again, where we've trained over 300 parents to become wellness advocates. We have our Fit to Learn professional development for teachers and principals, and that's really important to get the teacher and school buy-in. And then, of course, local and national school food and fitness advocacy. So we have our hands in both local and federal work, but we're really excited to continue to support health and wellness both locally and nationally. If you have any questions about the Fit to Learn program, please feel free to reach out. This is my address, email address, and then you can reach me at the number below. I'm happy to speak with anyone about the programs that we offer here in Chicago, and happy to share any thoughts or ideas to help make these improvements in your school as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Christy. So before we hand it over to Michael Heidkamp, we want to do one more quick poll question of the audience. We want to know, what area would you like to address in your school wellness environment? Do you want to incorporate more physical activity in the school day? Are you trying to establish an active wellness team, improve the school meal program, or get rid of unhealthy rewards, celebrations, and fundraisers? So I will briefly introduce Michael Heidkamp, who's the principal at Green Elementary. Green Elementary was awarded the gold certification of the Healthier U.S. School Challenge for meeting the rigorous requirements around nutrition education, physical activity, and school food. He's been working closely alongside Green's Wellness Committee to advance a variety of health and wellness projects, including a health night, family cooking classes, aerobic classes, and after-school student program focused on health and wellness. We're very excited to have Principal Heidkamp here today. He's a member of our Fit to Learn Principal Advisory Committee, and we truly appreciate him taking the time to join us. So before we hear from him, I will share the results of the poll. So it looks like most people are looking for ways to establish an active wellness team and then eliminate unhealthy rewards, celebrations, and fundraisers, but a pretty even split. And so I'm sure both Michael and Allison will highlight some good strategies for accomplishing that and share some of the work that they have done to move those initiatives forward. So Principal Heidkamp, I will hand it over to you now.
Great, thanks, Alex. Good morning, everyone. At Green, we're very much in the beginning stages of incorporating health and wellness into our school culture. We see integrating health and wellness into what we do at Green as very much transformative. It's a transformative process because it's not just about everyone's well-being, but it also impacts people's core values as well as their personal, private decision-making. And so it's a really powerful process, but one that's deep and one that needs to be done in a very intentional way. And sometimes just getting started is the most challenging part, so I'm going to focus my presentation on some of the steps that we took as a school community to begin that process of integrating health and wellness into who we are. Alex, can you change the slide, please?
Yes.
So a few things to be aware of, and it's not necessarily anything earth-shattering, but things that I think we took time to really reflect on and are learning about as we go through this process. One is buy-in, really thinking about like whom you need involved and at what level. There's a lot of different ways that people can be involved, and providing them with options gives them multiple entry points into being part of the process, and also gives them a stake in its success as well. For example, this year we're part of a grant that provides our school with a fruit and vegetable each week for students to taste, and for some of our teachers, their role right now in Health and Wellness Green is every week that vegetable rolls around, it might not be one that they like, but they're eating it and they've got a smile on their face and they're making great noises to show the kids that they really, really are enjoying themselves. And that's the way in which they're playing a role in promoting health and wellness. Now we have other teachers and parents who are much more involved at a higher level, but I think the key is to really give parents and staff and community members multiple entry points, so that once again they have a stake in the work that you're doing and they can really celebrate it with you. I think another thing to be aware of is this idea of initiative fatigue. We try very, very hard to communicate that this is something that's enhancing what's already going on and is just another resource in achieving our shared goals. So, and I think while that might seem natural to people who are initiating this process, that's not always natural for people who are in it, to see this not as something else, but as really an additional resource. So that's something that we've been really, really careful about messaging, along with this idea of misunderstanding, right? I think at times people can see this health and wellness as about taking things from children, being food Nazis, and it can actually lead to creating antagonistic relationships within the school and outside of the school, if not done in a very kind of reflective and intentional way. And a lot of our work early on in the process was, number one, helping people to see this as value added. For example, when we were changing the food and the incentives around celebrations, really talking about this isn't only making our celebrations healthier, but it's making them more meaningful. Instead of having a kid bring cupcakes and everyone kind of eating cupcakes, having a student sit in the middle of a group of their peers during their birthday and having every single student share something that they just want to celebrate about that child. That is so much more meaningful, a meaningful way to celebrate that child than the cupcakes. And so really messaging that to parents that this isn't just about health or wellness or restricting, but it's actually about enhancing and expanding. And I think your parents are the best people to get that message out. And then also this idea of like the old habits and maybe that's not necessarily the best way to put it, but I think the idea that not everyone necessarily is able to have that vision or to see beyond kind of where they are presently, and also acknowledging that food is something very personal, right, and being respectful of that, especially culturally. And so as much as possible, really working within the context and the culture of the community in which you reside to make sure that you're respectful of that, and that's your starting point. And then obviously resources, really thinking about kind of how you want to build your program out. For example, for us, we wanted a school garden, but that's really been a 3-year process, and every year we've grown it out a little bit more because our biggest concern was starting too soon. We didn't necessarily have the parent involvement necessary to tend to it over the summer. So it really wasn't until this summer that we felt we had a core group of parents that were going to be able to really come in on a consistent basis. And as a result of that, we added 6 new raised beds and significantly expanded our garden. But really thinking about starting small, but then having that vision and having that plan and then building towards it. You can change the slide, please. So I think health and wellness, as has just been stated, is not one of those initiatives that you can do on your own. Your students, are away from you. The children that you care for are away from you too much to really be able to control their eating. And if you don't involve the parents, what will happen is you become a gatekeeper. And once again, that's not the sort of relationship, that's not the sort of message that you want to send. So, but the great thing is it's a natural fit for parents to take on this role. They and their families have the most to gain from this change and the most to lose from the status quo. I mean, we've looked at a lot of the data already, and no one cares more about their children than they do. And in addition to that, they have the greatest influence on their children when it comes to healthy eating habits and exercise. And if they see this as a priority, then their children will also see it as a priority. And so, we have parent volunteers at our school, but we're always looking for opportunities for parents to actually assume leadership roles. And this health and wellness committee was really a way in which we were able to put parents not just in a role of being in the school and supporting the school, but really leading change within the school. And one thing that I would just want people to be aware of in this process, something that we kind of grew to become more aware of, is that when they assume that leadership role, they're taking a risk. And so, really setting them up to have some quick wins. We had like a health and wellness night that was integrated with our after-school showcase that they were able to put together. We actually put together a walkathon, and we raised money for the beds in our garden. So really thinking of ways in which they can build momentum, and also are not out there front and center feeling the pushback, but that they're really feeling as though they're making change and they're moving forward. And so as you put parents into that leadership role, I think it's terrific, and it's a really nice step from going from just volunteering to leading change, but then also just be aware of the dynamics that are involved in parents who maybe for the first time are assuming a role like that. Okay, if you can change the slide, please. Okay, and then, like I said before, this idea of really beginning with the small changes. One thing that we did off the bat was we had a Student of the Month ice cream social, and we changed it to the smoothie social, and that's become part of our kind of our narrative. The lore of green is how the Health and Wellness Committee, we went from eating ice cream and whipped cream and all sorts of toppings to having a healthy option way to celebrate our Students of the Month. So parents would come in, students would come in, our Health and Wellness Committee would develop the smoothies. There'd be a recipe out there so that parents could take that home with them. But the celebration didn't skip a beat, and people really, really, I think, appreciated the thoughtfulness that went into making that change. And the kids enjoyed it just as much as they were enjoying the previous Student of the Month celebration. And so that's another thing that we're trying to do is really create a whole different system of incentives. Everything from like extra reading time to extra math time to extra recess to writing time in the green garden to lunch with a teacher or administrator, getting an extra healthy snack during the day. Sometimes homerooms challenge each other to different sports competitions. So really looking and getting really creative and broadening sort of like what we're offering to students as ways of recognizing their development and making sure that that functions as two, at least in a dual role, if not more, but at the very least, both acknowledging their accomplishment and also building kind of the health and wellness of our community. In addition to also, I think a lot of times it also builds community as well. So trying to get kind of like multiple bangs for your buck through a lot of these changes, I think is a critical piece. If you can change the slide. And then I think this idea of really letting not only parents but letting students teach and lead, really making connections outside of your school. And in addition to that, one of the things that we did was we had recess parents who come in. They've offered tips and run events not only for parents but also for other schools. So for parents, of things that they can do in the home, but then for other schools, the type of ways in which they can organize their recess activities, but really setting up the recess aides as professionals, as having a skill set that's unique, and then having context in which they can share that skill set with others. I think it's also really, really important, this goal setting piece of setting benchmarks for yourself as a community. It could be everything from like we have X number of books checked out from our health and wellness library this year. It could be X number of families involved in our health and wellness night. X number of families signing a pledge to eat healthy, whatever. But I think it's really, really important in building, once again, that momentum and that sense of community, that sense of accomplishment to really have goals set. And then the other piece, I think this idea of everything should have multiple purposes, this idea of community building. We don't have enough time and resources to have things play just one role. So, looking at recess and seeing it as a time for exercise, but also as a time for leadership, community building, social skill building, all of those things wrapped together. All right, Alex, if you change the slide, please. And then really reaching out. We've done a lot. This is a really nice time to be, I think, in Chicago Public Schools, especially if around a lot of these initiatives, because there's so many supports. But here locally, Healthy Schools campaign itself has done a great job of really developing our Parent Health and Wellness Committee and parent leadership of being a supported network. Urban Initiatives is a group that we've worked with that in the past has given us a recess coordinator so that our recess staff is trained, once again, that professionalization of the staff. I'm not assuming that everyone necessarily knows what high-quality recess looks like. And maintaining those expectations. Common Threads is an organization. They help us. We have a world cuisine class. So our 4th and 5th graders cook every week. It's from a different part of the world. And they bring in food sometimes from our garden, but they also supply food. And that's one of our most popular after-school classes. They also offer classes for parents and children together. There's a family cooking class. We do a lot of work with Kitchen Community and Open Lands around our outdoor space and designing it. University of Illinois Chicago, their health and wellness program, and also the Eat What You Grow program, allowing us to bring food in from our garden into our kitchen, our cafeteria. So really looking at a variety of different resources, once again, not doing it alone, but then also allowing your parents to guide that process so that they feel as though these steps are very integrated. They can do the talking, they can do the promoting, they can do the explaining of how all these different pieces work together. And just being super intentional and slow, I think, is better initially, just so that you're able to make sure that you're building in the right way and with the right people. Okay, last slide. So next steps. So some things that we want to we're working on. One is we've got an additional 30 minutes a week for PE, and we're actually doing that as 6 minutes of movement into our day. So it's at different points in the day for different grade levels, but they've been working with our PE teacher and been doing some training, as well as he's developing a movement newsletter going out every other week, spotlighting a particular classroom and adding in new and different practices. I think one thing that we want our teachers to better understand is we talk about different interventions, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 being for all students, Tier 2 being for students who maybe need some more additional support, and Tier 3 being really significant, potentially one-on-one support. But understanding that these health and wellness initiatives actually act as academic and behavioral Tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions if they're used in an intentional way by the adults in the building. And that 30 minutes is really not just a mandate. It's not just a great way to get kids up and moving, but it's also a great resource to use in addressing the needs of your particular classroom and your group of students. We also stole something from Namaste from Allison, and we're doing family breakfast. And what we're doing with that is 3 times a year, every grade level has a family breakfast, and then we use that as an opportunity for families to get into the classroom. So it also becomes a really nice way for them to have breakfast together, have a little conversation about health and wellness at home, and then move them into the actual classroom and showcase some of the academic work as well. So those are some of the different things that we're doing in terms of our next steps. And then actually, I think we have one last slide just with some of the different sort of ways in which we're trying to integrate this into our academic program as well. And so one of the ways that we're doing that is through read aloud text. Both that, like the admin will come in and read, but then also that teachers are integrating into their curriculum. So that's it for me. Thank you, everyone, very, very much. You're welcome to reach out. As you can see, that's my CPS email, so please don't hesitate at any time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. That was wonderful, and it's always so exciting to hear about what's going on at Green Elementary and about the new initiatives that you're launching. So thank you so much for sharing that. So before I introduce Allison, we're going to do one last poll question. We want to know, in your experience, how receptive are parents to help promoting changes in their schools? Have they been very receptive, somewhat receptive, a little ambivalent? If you can respond, that would be great. And I will introduce Allison. So Allison began her education career at teaching kindergarten in Houston as a Teach for America Corps member. And this experience set her on the path to founding Namaste Charter School, which is a charter school on the southwest side of Chicago, which serves mainly low-income minority students in a holistic environment designed to put health and wellness education alongside academic instruction for lifelong student and family success. And we are fortunate to have Allison as a member of our Fit to Learn Principals Advisory Committee as well, and always love hearing about the wonderful things going on at Namaste. So before I hand it over to Allison, I'll share the results of the poll. So it looks like there's been a mix of parent receptiveness to health and wellness. Some people having parents that aren't receptive, ambivalent, but then a lot of parents who are somewhat receptive. So I think Allison is going to talk about some of the initiatives that they have going on at Namaste and hopefully give people some ideas for ways that they can continue to engage parents and maybe make them a little more receptive to health and wellness. So Allison, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Alex. It's great to be here again. So I'm just going to talk about some specific initiatives that we have engaged in over the past 10 years and sort of the things that have been most successful for us over the past 10 years. So you can change the slide. And really focus on those things, like I said, that have been most successful. And we definitely, I think Mike and I both welcome questions afterwards. Some of this stuff is sort of trial and error, so we have definitely tried some things that I probably won't share today, but can talk definitely about the things that have been most successful and the things maybe that have not been successful as well. You can change the slide. I think we've heard both from Christy and Mike, the importance of family engagement, both in the academic realm, sort of kids adjust to school easier, that they attend school more because parents think it's important for them to be here. They've been here to see it themselves. They have improved attitudes towards school, and their grades and test scores go up. And so if you're ever looking for some information for people who don't think it's that important or don't want to focus on. There's a website there to support with research the idea that family engagement is really important. Next slide. Here is a long list, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but of some of the ways that we have seen success and are now helping other schools to implement in their different environments in order to help their schools experience some success. So the first way, Mike mentioned it already, is Friday Family Breakfast. We have been doing this for 10 years. And our Friday Family Breakfast program was really developed as an opportunity for families to learn about different healthy options that they could give their students for breakfast, learn the value of sitting down and talking as a family during a meal, and then also have a time to meet the teachers in a non-threatening environment, talk about anything that is concerning them, or just get to know them as people, and then experience something about school. So we are on trimesters here at Namaste, and each grade level has one breakfast per trimester. And again, it's an opportunity for families to eat what we're eating in the cafeteria. They'll get like a little pamphlet which has the recipe of what we're serving so that they could then make that at home if their family really likes it. And now afterwards we have a Pride Assembly. So Mike mentioned that he has his families go into the classrooms. We actually have our students do some kind of presentation, and we have experienced a large increase in participation in those breakfasts because everybody wants to see their child, perform in something. So it's been really nice to see, close to 80, 90% of families in any grade level really participate in that activity. Next slide. We also do a health fair, and this is an opportunity, also as Mike said, to sort of integrate some of our partners. And so we use our neighborhood Walgreens, we use our neighborhood universities, some different partners who work in the health and wellness arena. We do a farmer's market on this day. We have the farm truck come. So it's just sort of a holistic opportunity for families to learn about different things that relate to health. They can get vaccinations, flu vaccinations. They can get their blood pressure taken, things like that. And there's lots of activities for children there as well. So again, just an opportunity to bring families into the school and showcase a lot of things that are really important for their overall success. Next slide. One of the things that we've realized over the course of 10 years is we do a lot of different workshops for and with families, but families really like when they get engaged in something to develop a community around it. And so we've really shied away from doing sort of one-off workshops on things, and we do lots of series of classes, either led by us here at Namaste or by some of our partners. And one of our most successful ones is a parenting skills workshop. We sort of break it up. Right now we're running one for parents of 7 to 12-year-olds, but then we have a different one that runs sometimes for parents of 0 to 7-year-olds and then parents of 12 to 16-year-olds. That's taught in Spanish because we have a high proportion of students and families who speak Spanish here. And it's an ongoing class. So it runs for 8 weeks. It's 2 hours in the evening. We provide babysitting for children. And the parents really develop a community, and so they continue to attend because they don't want, to let down their community. And then we find just a lot larger degree of success at the end of those workshops that are multiple sessions in a row. Next slide. Mike mentioned this as well, but we do a Commit to Be Fit program with our families, and we offer different family exercise programming 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Now, this last year we had it twice a week. Now we have it 3 times a week. And we have different options for them. So there's a Zumba option, there's a yoga option. We have one of our graduates come back, and the families pay her $1 per student to watch the students here in our library, and they get to have a 45 to 60-minute exercise class. So we used to partner with the YMCA, and they would send a trainer over to do it, but now our PE teachers and our general education staff actually have each selected one day that they do their programming on, and the parents come and get to exercise. And the great thing about that is not only do they get to exercise, but they learn a lot of things that they can do with their students at home. They're hearing the same language that their students hear while they're here at school in physical education class, and they're a lot better able to work with and identify areas where their students are doing well and maybe areas they need to focus on improving. Next slide. Our family advisory group is called the School Health Advisory Committee. We call it SHAC. And it's teachers, parents, and administrators working specifically about different ways to implement Namaste's wellness policy. So I think, you know, a policy is great, and actually the Chicago Public Schools has a really comprehensive wellness policy, but we all know it's not about writing the policy, it's about implementing the policy. And so this group each year will focus on looking really closely at the policy and picking one way to help educate the rest of the community about that element of the policy. So it could be, you know, celebrations, as was mentioned earlier. It could be looking at food from home in any situation. It could be food at events that we hold. And so there's a component of looking at the policy, thinking about the barriers to implementation, how do we educate the community about that, and then how do we really monitor and implement that element of the policy. And that has really brought a sense of leadership, as was mentioned earlier as well, to those families in a positive way to figure out how they can help people better understand the different policies and procedures we use here at the school. Next slide. Once a trimester, we also do a farmer's market, and we partner with our produce vendor, so the person that, that provides the produce for our students will provide a huge and wide variety of all different kinds of produce. We do it in the fall and then in the spring for extremely low prices. And our students are able to go and purchase fruits and vegetables during recess. We invite families and the community to come and purchase. And of course, teachers are allowed to purchase as well. And last year, we did a really interesting thing where we had families, students would go home and they would try, or they would go to the market and they would try to purchase all of the things to make something at home, and then come back and share, you know, the recipe of what they were able, or the menu items of what they were able to create with the produce that they purchased. So again, a way for kids to be real leaders. They learn about money. They learn about buying things. They learn about you know, how their money goes kind of further when they're buying certain things that are in season and different things like that. And it's just a great opportunity for our families to have low-cost produce, different kinds of produce, and be really excited and get to buy those things with their students. Next slide. Sort of the last thing is really keeping that open door of communication. And so we do a weekly newsletter for our families, and there's a health corner in that newsletter where we're not talking about activities that happen at the school or events or things like that, but it's literally like a healthy tip. And so, you know, it could be, did you know that, you know, children between the ages of 7 and 12 need 11 hours of sleep a night? And, you know, or it could be around the different vitamins and minerals that that are in different kinds of fruits and vegetables, and why you want to have, you know, that rainbow on your plate. But it's just a really small nugget. But since it's every week, you know, over the course of 40 weeks in a year, families are really learning a lot about health and wellness. And, you know, sometimes there's a little note in there that, like, if you send your kid to school knowing this fact, you know, they'll get a Namaste noticing, which is, you know, one of our incentives that we have here at Namaste. Next slide. So in sort of alignment with what was shared earlier, you know, lots of things that we've learned about how to make these things successful. Advertising events on different levels. You know, Facebook is really big now, so we're posting things on our Facebook page, but we also have, you know, lots of posters around the school and on the doors, flyers that go home through the children. So, you know, if our class gets at least 50% of our families to this event, you know, we can have, you know, a party where we can, you know, have extra recess time, or we can go to the playground or things like that. Providing families with a variety of different opportunities, and so maybe, you know, one family's not into exercising together, but they would come to the health fair, or they would really like a parenting class. So really trying to find a variety of opportunities that meet the different needs of different families. Partnerships, you can't do everything yourself, so it's great to have partners that will help you offer things in and around your school for your community. We have regular events. So I think in 180 days of school last year, we had over 100 events. And that can be anything from, you know, a really small community breakfast to a larger farmer's market or something like that. And so really having a lot of things so that there's a lot of things to choose from for families. And time, you know, respecting that, you know, families have to do things together, and after school time is difficult for lots of families. And so being really careful planning events that take family schedules into account, and offering things both before, during, and after the school day, as well as on weekends. And, you know, through those avenues, we've gotten last year we had only one family out of almost 300 families at the school to attend at least one out-of-school time event. So that was exciting. Next slide. The last thing we do is we always evaluate our events. So really making sure that we're asking families what they think, we're asking staff what they think, we're looking at the attendance logs, and then we're changing and tweaking things to better meet the needs of our families. That's really important to us, so that we're not just doing things because we've done them for a long time, that we're really looking at how they can be the most successful that they can be. So I hope you've gotten some ideas of different things that potentially you could integrate or do at your school. I'd be happy to answer questions and or provide more information. And my contact information is right there on the screen. And we're happy to share the things that we do, and hoping that more schools can begin to meet both the health and wellness and academic needs of their students. So thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Allison. That was some really fantastic information, and we appreciate you taking the time to share it with us. So we are going to take the last 15 minutes for our question and answer session. So please feel free, type in those questions under the question box on your control panel and send them in, and we'll make sure to get to them. Just before we get started, we will, once again, we'll be sending out a link to the recording of the webinar. And also, that will include a link to download the presenter slides. I know a lot of you have sent in questions wanting to know if the PowerPoints are going to be available, and yes, they will. We will make sure to share all the wonderful information that's been included in the slides. So we will go ahead and get started with the question and answer session. Again, feel free to keep sending in those questions. The first question is for both Michael and Allison. You both spoke a lot about community partners and how valuable those partnerships are to supporting your programs. Can you speak a little more about how you find those partners, how those partnerships are formed, or any tips you can share for how people can create those types of partnerships?
Allison, you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, we're very fortunate in Chicago to have a lot of local partners. And I think if you're in Chicago, can give you definitely specifics on those. But if you're not in Chicago, it's always great to look at, local universities and then other not-for-profit organizations that exist in your city. So YMCAs and other organizations that sort of are like-minded. And I think, everyone wants to help schools continue to achieve. What they don't know most times is sort of how the nuts and bolts to make those things happen, and they want to make sure that they're getting something out of it. And so, why does the YMCA want to send a trainer here weekly? Well, because the parents are going to get, psyched about the trainer and then probably join the YMCA. And so really making those connections explicit for the community partners and how, you can help them. You have a huge constituency as a school, whether it's the parents and families, the students, the teachers, right? And all of those different constituencies can give something, so to speak, to that partner. And so just sort of trying to make that explicit when you're creating the partnership. And just like we talked about giving a menu of options to families, giving a menu of options when you have that first meeting with a potential partner. So we could do this together, or we could do this together. Can I follow up with you in a couple of weeks or next week to see which option would be best for you? So hopefully that answered your question, but if not, definitely ask for more specifics.
Great, thank you. Another question for Al, or sorry, Michael, do you have anything to add?
I guess I would just concur. And I think that vision piece is so critical to really come to the table with something that you're genuinely excited about, and that you feel like that excitement can be contagious because, like Allison was saying, people want to be part of something. Right, and so I think you need to really kind of have that sort of set and ready to go so that you can make your pitch in a way that's really compelling.
Great, thank you. A question for Allison. Allison, how do you distribute your weekly newsletter? Is it electronically or paper-based?
So at the beginning of the year, we collect emergency contact information for all families, and we do everything on a family basis. So we have a lot of siblings that come here because we're K through 8th grade, and so everything is on a family basis. If the family has an active working email address, we ask for it on the emergency information, and it is delivered via email on Mondays. And then we take that subset of families that does not have access to the internet regularly or an active email address, and we do make paper copies, as I mentioned, 1 per family. And we have learned over the years that we actually send it home with the youngest child, because the families are most likely to check the younger student's backpack than the older student's backpack. So we do sort of a combination of those two things.
That is a great tip. Okay, a question for both presenters. I would love to hear about how you have worked to include kids with medically necessary food restrictions in some of the food-based activities and policies that you've implemented.
So, I can start with, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Allison, please.
Okay, I can start with that. And just side note, as a parent of a child with some significant food allergies as well. I have a daughter with a dairy allergy and peanut and shellfish. So dairy isn't everything, I have realized. I have like a different lens that I look through this question with as well. So we are a peanut-free school. We have introduced the students to soy nut butter, and they do, we do have that as an option on some of our days when we're having sandwiches and things like that. And they, learn to dip their apples in soy nut butter and things like that. But we are a totally peanut-free school, and peanuts is not the hard thing. It's, processed in a plant with peanuts. And so we encourage all snacks in classrooms to be fresh fruits and vegetables. Some children are allergic to some fresh fruits and vegetables, but it's a lot easier to control than, boxed snacks typically. And so we really focus on offering fresh fruits and vegetables to our students. And then, we continually learn about the allergies that our students have and try to make accommodations for them, both in the lunchroom and, when we're doing food-based activities.
Yeah, we do a lot. I mean, we work very closely with our school nurse, making sure that we have all that information on hand. And then also the fruits and vegetable piece is something that we're transitioning to as well. Is really trying to make sure that that becomes the bulk of what's shared in the classrooms, either for snacks or for celebration.
Great, thank you. Next question again for both presenters. How do you fund your after-school programs? And maybe if you have thoughts on just kind of funding in general, if you have any advice to share. I know that's something that people are always interested in learning more about.
Yes, so we have what's called After School All-Stars. So we apply every year for grants for after-school programming. That's one way we support our after-school programs. We also work with community partners to offer programming at a pretty low price so that we can augment what we're able to support here. We've also had programming where parents, we have folklore dance and other programs that some of our parents run for the children. So really using a wide range of different resources within the community and being super aggressive about seeking out grants. And then we also, we put a amount aside every single year, and we're pretty vigilant about protecting that to ensure that that we always have after-school options for our students.
And I would just echo what Mike said. Funding for after school is definitely something that has taken a hit in this, penny pinching environment. We do charge for after-school programming. The after-school programming is very reasonably priced, but it is difficult, to not operate with some grant funding or additional funding. We do offer a limited number of scholarships for families who cannot pay anything to participate in our after-school programs.
Great, thank you. And I believe this question is for Allison, or Michael, if you have thoughts on it as well, please feel free to jump in. What kind of surveys or needs assessments do you use for the parents and staff? So Allison, you spoke a little bit about evaluation. Can you elaborate a little more on how you collect that information?
Well, we do like a really basic survey at the beginning of the year typically, where we're asking families like what they really want for this year. So kind of like Alex, you did, with the participants. What's one goal you have this year, or what's one thing you really want to participate in, so that we can make sure that that is an option for families. And then, as I mentioned, we do a very quick survey at the end of each event, a little written, like exit ticket almost, to see why parents come, if they would be willing to get more parents to come to this event, or if this is an event that, we shouldn't have anymore.
Great, thank you. Another question for both presenters. What has been the biggest challenge in improving the health and wellness of your school environment? I know that is a broad question, but you can elaborate on multiple challenges. But we had a number of people wanting to know some of those challenges you've encountered.
I'd say one thing is just sort of sustaining it as a focus, as an ongoing kind of centerpiece to all that we do. I think Namaste might be a little bit different in that respect, as it's like embedded in their mission. And I think for us, as a school that has that as one of many different initiatives and priorities, is really making sure that number one, it's given the time and attention and resources that it deserves, and also maintaining that parent leadership piece. I think that is something else that really, just because you have a leadership group one year doesn't necessarily mean that those same people are going to step up, or that you necessarily even want that same group to step up, but making sure that you're constantly tending to those opportunities and that development so that as new parents come in, they're really being given the same opportunities to step up, and finding ways to really attract your parents to get in initially into your school and feel comfortable doing so that you can start to develop that talent for the leadership position.
Great, thank you. Allison, do you have thoughts on that?
I think, to echo what Mike says, I think even with it embedded into like who we are, it's challenging to keep sort of the focus on that. And I just think, just to reiterate some of the things you said earlier about perception, no parent wants their child to be unhealthy. They just don't, in a lot of ways, know how to make some of the things that we talk about a reality. And so I think really trying to identify with their challenges. I mean, when kids are throwing fits around food, it's hard when you don't have behavior management strategies, to get them focused on something else or to not give in to that. And even when you do have those strategies, I have those challenges myself with my children. So I think, it's just really important to validate where the families are coming from, everything they have on their plates, and making everything accessible to them in multiple ways.
Great, thank you. A question for Michael, and Allison, you touched on this a little in your presentation, but feel free to add your thoughts. Michael, can you elaborate on how your wellness committee was started, and for a school wanting to know how they don't have a wellness committee and are trying to figure out how to start one? Do either of you have any thoughts on how to begin that process and get one going?
Yes, so we had, we actually, our parent advisory committee offered one of the things that was very popular, and Allison spoke about this in MSC too, is parent exercise classes. And so we had consistently high turnouts for those classes, and that was kind of the starting point. We offered sort of nutritional education, and then from there identified some parents, and obviously opened it to everyone, but there were some parents there that really felt moved by what they were hearing, and were experimenting with a lot of it at home and starting to input it into their daily routines. And so that's kind of where we started. So we brought parents in first in something that was just a natural for them, these exercise classes, and then sort of built from there.
Great, thank you. And Allison, do you have any thoughts on steps schools can take to creating a wellness committee?
I just think reaching out to multiple constituents. So, there's always a teacher or two or a staff member or two who this, really sort of resonates with. Getting them to really get on board and be a leader. And then lots of times that faculty member will get some of the families that he or she teaches or is close to get super engaged, or just reach out to other people who have been, leaders in those endeavors. And then another way, depending on the age level of students that you serve, is through the students. So, we go all the way through 8th grade, and our 7th and 8th graders have a student senate, and there's a health advisor on that senate who is also a member of the wellness team. So, all the different constituents is great. It's great, too, if you can get someone from your lunchroom on that team, like the lunchroom manager or someone that works in the lunchroom, so that you can have people that, really come at it from multiple angles.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we are at 10:30, so we're going to go ahead and end the webinar. I just want to say thank you once again to both of our presenters for sharing all your insight into how to create healthier school environments and engage parents in those efforts. And thank you to everybody who joined us today for sending in all of your questions. Once again, we do have 3 more webinars coming up this fall, and we'll be sending out a link to register for those later this week. And thank you once again for joining us. We hope to connect with you all later, and an email will be coming out by the end of the week with a link to the webinar recording and slides. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Bye.